When you think of the word nuclear, what comes to mind?
The first thing many people think of is nuclear war and mushroom clouds. You add into that major events like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and most recently Fukushima, and those have had incredibly profound consequences on people's immediate feelings and images and associations with this technology.
In 1979, the partial meltdown and ensuing radiation leak at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania cost about $1 billion to clean up. The disaster stoked public fears about nuclear power. Stricter safety standards were imposed. Reactors became more expensive to build, and fewer were built. Only one new nuclear reactor has come online in the U.S. since 1996. The nuclear disasters at Chernobyl in 1986 and Fukushima Daiichi in 2011 led to further scrutiny of the industry, as concerns mounted over the long-term effects of the radiation exposure.
If a nuclear power plant was being built in my town, I'd be pretty nervous about it. However, as a conservationist, that makes me feel really conflicted because these power plants don't emit CO2, and that's the main pollutant that's causing climate change.
There is no more fire season. We have wildfires all year round.
When you look at the technology and you ask yourself, how are we going to solve this problem of climate change? To not have nuclear energy be on the table makes the job much harder.
一些科学家开始跳脱框架思考，难道在永和与反核之间就没有第三条路可走了吗？其实不然。
When we talk about nuclear energy, we usually think about fission or splitting the atom. But there's another type, one that turned out to be much more elusive.
I give the command. Fusion!
Fusion has been called the holy grail of energy.
We'll see it every day because the sun is fed by fusion. We want to do the same here on Earth.
核融合不是新的概念，早从1920年代起，科学家就不断找寻实现核融合的方法。如果人类能够造出一个人造太阳，地球上所有的能源问题都将不再是问题。美国 CNBC 电视台制作长达22分钟的核融合专题，带领大家认识这个既可以解决地球暖化，而且几乎没有残余辐射的未来能源希望。
In a fusion reaction, extreme temperatures and intense pressure cause hydrogen atoms to fuse together, forming helium atoms. In the process, the atoms lose some mass, which is converted into vast amounts of energy. The reaction could produce 4 times as much energy as nuclear fission, and nearly 4 million times more energy than burning coal or gas.
Or another way to think about it is 2 pounds of fusion fuel is the same as about 55,000 barrels of oil.
It doesn't contribute to greenhouse gases. The fuel is plentiful and can be found essentially everywhere in the world. The radioactivity would be short-lived. There's no possibility of a runaway reaction, so it's an inherently safe system.
目前最接近核融合这个梦想的是正在法国南部新建的 ITER 计划。
International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, or ITER, the project aims to create the world's largest and most powerful fusion reactor. Originated nearly 35 years ago at the Geneva Superpower Summit. Now, China, the European Union, India, Japan, Korea, Russia, and the United States are all working together to build what would be the world's largest tokamak reactor. ITER's tokamak reactor will be twice the size of the current largest machine and aims to produce 500 megawatts of fusion power from 50 megawatts of heating power. The immediate goal of ITER is not energy production, though the project does have an eye towards eventual commercialization.
And that device should be completed around the 2024 period, and then targeting to go nuclear in the 2035 period. So by 2040, which seems a long way, we will have gained all the information that allows the next generations to build demos.
It's a grand vision, but even if ITER hits all its targets, how to translate that into a commercially viable reactor remains somewhat unclear.
但是，为了让地球不在极端气候中毁灭，同时确保全球能源稳定供应，挑战核融合是值得的。
ITER is going to cost roughly about $20 billion. It cost roughly about $120 billion in today's money to put Neil Armstrong on the moon. So we're a fraction of that cost.
As of 2019, about 450 reactors worldwide operate in 31 countries. And some countries, such as France, Hungary, Slovakia, and Ukraine, get more than half of their power from nuclear energy, generating about 10% of the world's total electricity. This represents 29% of all the world's low-carbon power and 55% of the United States' low-carbon power. Countries such as China, India, and Russia are building new reactors at a fairly fast clip. But in the United States, more than one-third remain unprofitable or face closure. And climate change activists say the world needs to decarbonize using the resources we have now, before it's too late.
We need to turn to fission, turn to solar, turn to wind, turn to geothermal, turn to hydroelectric, do whatever we can to get off of the carbon addiction.
I think the question is political will. To what extent are our governments willing to spend the money to investigate these things?
中国大陆从上世纪50年代就开始对核融合研究，1999年正式立项建立托卡马克装置，创造人造太阳。
目前，中科院等离子体所自主发展了68项关键核心技术，建成了20个国际先进的平台和系统，创造了101.2秒稳态长脉冲高约束等离子体运行的世界纪录。在可控核聚变领域，中国正在完成由跟跑、并跑到领跑的华丽转身。
我们梦想就是按照这个任务，已经在2020年底要完成工程设计，同时我们开始自主一些关键的大部件的研发。我们想到那时候，我们能够具备建造中国聚变工程试验堆。如果这个建成了，世界上第一个。
Fusion has traditionally been the purview of government labs like Lawrence Livermore and Oak Ridge. But more recently, a number of private companies have thrown their hat in the ring. This includes General Fusion, which aims to bring a commercial reactor to market in the 2030s.
There are billionaire investors, people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Peter Thiel.
Dozens of companies going after this silver bullet energy solution.
The energy market on the planet is $1 trillion a year. And so if we take a sizable chunk of that, we get a sizable fraction of $1 trillion a year.
If you were to ask me what is the most challenging thing about fusion, I would not say holding some hot gas at 150 million degrees Celsius. I actually think it's our mentality. It's not in our lifespan, but it is in our grandkids or the great-great-grandkids type lifespan.